Hey guys, so this video is going to be about non-Mendelian genetics. Alright, so before I go into the meat of that, we should probably go over the fact of what Mendelian genetics is. So Mendel is the person who is the father of genetics, and his main findings were essentially that one gene determines one trait. And with this, his phenotypes that he discovered were literally like all or nothing. So either you have the thing or you don't. So either you have curly hair or you have straight hair. Like, that's it. So when things are heterozygous, right, it still means that you would express that dominant trait. So that was Mendel. It's very clear cut. Now, non-Mendelian genetics makes things a little bit more messy. So non-Mendelian genetics gives us more scenarios that it's talking about more than one gene determining a trait. An example of this is actually skin color. So there are actually a number of genes that determine what color your skin is. It's not just one gene determining that. Non-Mendelian genetics also talks about incomplete dominance. So incomplete dominance is a mix of genes. Okay? Is a mix of genes. So let me give you an example that'll probably make it a little bit clearer. So let's say you cross a red flower with a white flower. Now, according to Mendelian genetics, either you're going to get a red flower or a white flower. Like, it's going to be one of those two things. However, in non-Mendelian genetics, your offspring is actually going to be a pink flower as an option. Alright, my other thing that can occur is something called codominance. Now, codominance is when both traits are present. So co meaning like together, dominant. So an example, let's say, is that if I had a striped flower mate with a dotted flower, my offspring would be striped and dotted. So it shows both. It shows both dominant traits. Another example of codominance is actually blood type. Alright, so this is actually really cool. So your blood type, every single being, but humans have different blood types. And this is actually a codominant example. So there are 4 different blood types. We have O blood, AB, A, and B. So the way that this chart reads is my blood type, that becomes my phenotype, so that's the trait that I'm expressing. My genotype, these are the letters that we represent, and this actually tells us like who we can donate to. So I'm type A, that's my blood type. If you don't know blood type, you can always ask your doctor, or when you donate blood, they'll tell you. So my blood type is type A, so I could donate blood to other people who have type A, B, and A. I could also receive from type O and type A blood. Now, something really cool, if you have type O blood, oh my god, that's awesome. That means if you start to donate blood and they realize that your blood is type O, they're going to be ringing your phone off the hook because you are the universal donor. So you can literally donate to any other type of blood, which is super awesome. If you have type AB blood, that means that you are the universal receiver. That means that you could take any type of blood. So if you're injured, type O has the advantage, like when people come in injured and we don't know everything about them, like we don't have time to test their blood, if you give them type O, then we can like transfuse the blood if they're in need of it. If you're AB and you're in trouble, well, good news for you, you can receive any type of blood. So before we get into doing Punnett squares with these lovely blood types, I first want to go over just some nomenclature of how to write these different genotypes. There are a couple of ways. So for the genotype for type O, you could write it like this, or you could write it like this. These are like I's and then little O's. So that's just another way to write it. For type AB blood, you could write it like this, or you could write it like this. It's literally the same thing. If you are type A blood, okay, you could be homozygous dominant, or you could be heterozygous. Now these are two different genotypes. I'm just going to write them both in the same way. So this is homozygous dominant, which I can write like this or like this, and this is heterozygous. This is homozygous dominant, which I can write like this, or if I'm type B blood, I could actually, this is an I, B, I, or I could be heterozygous. So notice that my lowercase letters, that's my type O blood. This is my only like homozygous recessive genotype, and type O is my only phenotype that has a homozygous recessive genotype. When I have type A, if I just say I have type A, I could either be homozygous dominant or I could be heterozygous, and these are the two ways that I could write it. Okay, so let's do an example. Let's say that Dad has type A. Now remember, if I just say type A, they could be homozygous dominant or heterozygous. Either one. I'm going to say that he's homozygous dominant. So HOM is for homozygous, DOM, this is DOM, is for dominant, so that means that he is AA. My mom could be also type A, but she is going to be hetero, so that means AI. So if I want to determine the child blood type, I need to do a Punnett square. Alright, as always, I can put my dad on the top and then my mom on the side. And if I fill this in like a multiplication table, I can see that my child's blood type is for sure going to be type A. That would be its phenotype. And then it could be AA, so homozygous dominant, or it could be heterozygous. These are my genotype options. Now, that's all well and good. The more juicy stuff comes when I can actually use this to determine who's your daddy. So, I don't know if you've ever watched the show Maury, where they scream and yell and say, you are the father, you're not the father, all that good stuff. Well, before DNA was present and we could do genetics tests, we had at least our blood type. So I want to give us a scenario. Let's say our dad is type B. Our mom is type O. And our child is type A. Now, father's like, I don't know if you've really been faithful. I don't think that this is my child, so let's go figure that out. So remember, we're going to do some Punnett squares and some genetics to figure it out. So if we say that the dad is type B, that means that he could either be homozygous dominant or he could be heterozygous, either one. My mom, I only have one genotype. I know that she has to be homozygous recessive. If my child is type A, then the child could be either heterozygous or homozygous dominant. So how can I figure this out? Because my dad has two different options for his genotype, I'm going to need to do two Punnett squares against the mom. So my first one, I'm going to use homozygous dominant, against my mom, which was homozygous recessive. Okay, so option 1, my child could be heterozygous but type B. That doesn't match. Ooh, this is not looking so good. And then my second Punnett square is going to be my heterozygous option. Okay, so options for child are either they have to be either type B with heterozygous, or they could be type O, which is homozygous recessive, and yikes, this child is type A. Therefore, oh man, he would have a rough time on Mari. He is not the father. Yikes. Very awkward. Okay, so that was about non-Mendelian genetics. You can start, don't forget this part at the very bottom. So start with this, and then continue and have fun.